Okay, so today we are talking about the guide created by MusiCounts and CBC Music in partnership with myself. It's singing in Indigenous languages, so we'll have the opportunity to go over it together today. But of course, I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. And as I mentioned, I am of the Mohawk Nation, and I come from Niagara region. In particularly, I am from Fort Erie, which is a town that has quite a bit of an Indigenous population, in particular Haudenosaunee or Mohawk. And there is the Fort Erie Native Friendship Center, also a program called Aboriginal Head Start, and that's where I used to be a preschool teacher. That is where, as you see, I'm an early childhood educator. That's where I learned how to speak Mohawk. I didn't learn as a child as a result of our unfortunate past as a nation. My family lost our language for a few generations, and so as a 23-year-old early childhood educator, fresh out of school, I started working at Aboriginal Head Start, and I was learning Mohawk right alongside the children. And I fell in love with the language. And so I decided to take a step back from teaching for a couple of years. And I actually went to a program on Six Nations called Ungwanaganjokwa, where I learned Mohawk language fluently for 2 years. It was an immersion program. From there, I've considered myself a Mohawk language advocate. I love it so much. I want to share it with anyone who will listen, and so I'm happy for you guys to be here tonight for that. And so as a result of that, I've done a lot of work with the language when it comes to creating resources, teaching classes, working with organizations such as CBC Music and MusiCounts, as I have this past summer, creating this resource, and just continuing to expand that work that I'm doing with the language. Whatever it is I'm doing, it's to promote the language and get the word out there. So I'm also a mother of one beautiful girl. So what we can expect tonight is to hear a little bit of a background on this year's song in the Canadian Class Challenge. We're also going to take a tour of the guide, singing in Indigenous languages, and we're going to do a practice run of one of the guide activities. And then, of course, at the end, I'll leave it open for some questions and answers. So just a background on the this year's Canadian Music Class Challenge song. Every year there is a partnership with an Indigenous singer to provide a song for the classes to sing in an Indigenous language, which is such a cool opportunity because, we know that there's not too many opportunities to find such content. So to have CBC Music and MusiCounts offering that and inviting the students in the classes and the teachers to participate in it, it's a really unique and amazing experience. And this year's song is close to my heart because I was part of it. I translated the song, but also because the singer, the music writer, is my sister, Shawnee Kish. She brought me on as the translator, and she was kind of like the words and music. But even cooler than that, she had the great idea to involve the youth of Fort Erie, of our hometown Fort Erie. And so what she did is she held a workshop, a songwriting workshop, and I was fortunate to be a part of that workshop and see it right from the beginning. It was really neat, the exercises that she did for the kids. Basically, she gave them each a journal and a pen, and she gave them prompts and said, for example, I believe, and then they would write these words based on just that prompt that she would give. And I remember being so blown away by what the kids were coming up with. It was just such profound, deep, and powerful music and words and poetry. And I mean, she was just right on the nose with it. It was so important to get their voices involved, the youth, to be able to share their voices, because it's a song for youth. So she really wanted to have it by youth. And from that, you know, where I kind of came in is we were coming up with these words like we're dreamers, and I was translating those words as we were going, but also there started to be a bit of a theme to the song, which was really, it reminded me of the teaching of the good road, which is more or less walking that path of in a good way, living your life in a good way, and taking steps forward, making good choices and living in a good way. And so that's called the good road. And so I kind of had the opportunity to say, hey, it sounds like this teaching, like maybe this is worth bringing up. And that is how the title of the song was born, Yohahio, the good road. If you haven't had the opportunity to hear it, we will take a moment to listen to this beautiful song.
We are dreamers, they were skynex, we are searching, they were liwisax, oh imagine, sanun tuniyun go, oh imagine, sanun tuniyun go. We walk either way, and we walk either way. The good road, Yohahio. The good road, Yohahio. I won't fade. My dreams will light the way with the strength. We are colors of the rays. Oh, imagine sun tuniyun go. Oh, imagine sun tuniyun go.
MusiCounts and CBC Music approached me as someone who was involved in this year's song and someone who also has a knowledge in Indigenous languages, and asked if we could work together on creating this practical guide, because such a cool opportunity to be able to sing the song, but we definitely recognize that there's a lot of questions, that there's a lot of I guess maybe barriers or obstacles that one might face when approaching or trying to share an Indigenous language, especially when we don't know a lot about it, and there's not really a lot of information available right now. And so we I worked in partnership with MusiCounts and CBC Music, and we created this guide, and it was created to support you guys and as you take on this amazing opportunity. And so in the guide, we answer common questions and concerns about sharing Indigenous knowledge, and it also provides an abundance of activities to support that knowledge. So to get those kids involved with the activities and the information that's available. So let's take a tour of it. And if you just bear with me for a moment, I'm going to need to switch over to the guide. So if you've, for just assuming not everyone has seen this guide before, this is what it looks like. And if you're looking for it, of course, you can go to the MusiCounts website. But you can also, if you just want to find it quick, it is easily available on Google with a quick Google search of MusiCounts singing in Indigenous languages. And it'll be the first one to come up. So of course, it starts with the introduction and just explaining what this resource is, why it's important. You know, we kind of touched on that. So it's created to empower the educators in school and community, and in particular with singing. What you'll find here, which I'll draw your attention to, is a bit of, I guess, a disclaimer. I shared the knowledge to the best of what I know, and what that comes with is that I come from a Mohawk background, so my knowledge is Mohawk ideology. And what I want everybody to know is that there are over 50 nations, Indigenous nations in Canada alone, and with each nation they have their own language, culture, practices. There's different dialects. Like there's no, basically what I want to just share as this disclaimer is that there's no black and white answer. I'm always going to give you the, as much knowledge as I can, but there's always going to be different opinions. There's always going to be different practices. And as I mentioned, a lot of my knowledge is going to be of Mohawk Indigenous language. So, the rules I know about that are not necessarily the same in a different language. But what I hope that you'll get from this is just understanding that there are different perspectives, that, most of our Indigenous nations, at the very least, I can say we share the same spirit. We share the same value in Mother Earth as, as our provider, and our love and our recognition of the spirit that exists in our Mother Earth and all living things. That's one thing we share. And with that comes just our different ways that we go about celebrating or practicing that and speaking our languages. And so, like I say, just I can share you my perspective in hopes that you'll see an insight to it, but knowing that that's not, my knowledge isn't going to be exactly the same across the board for Indigenous languages. So just keeping that in mind as you're teaching. And so the next page here, we get talking just an introduction to what the CBC Canadian Music Class Challenge is. And so it's a yearly program, equips educators with a list of songs by Canadian artists, and invites classes from across Canada to create a video of their own performance of the song they choose from the list. And this is our first clickable link. There's going to be tons in here, which is great. This is one resource, but there's lots of offshoots, and anything you see underlined here, clickable, and it'll bring you to a new link. So if you don't know anything about the program, click there and find out. It goes on to talk about Indigenous languages and how I mentioned that already, but each year there is an Indigenous artist that is featured as one of the songs, and classes have the opportunity to sing a song in an Indigenous language, which feels like a bit of a rare opportunity these days, but yeah, we're going to be getting into that. And we talked a little bit about this year's song already, just the history of how it was created. Yohahio by Shawnee Kish, and then a couple more clickable links here. So here you can view a video of Shawnee and myself discussing the song, what it means to sing an Indigenous language in educational contexts. And this is a great starting point. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So again, clicking here, it's kind of just a quick video. I would use it to show your students, right? It's a great opportunity to have something to bring in and show them. Of course, this guide is going to go into much more detail than the video does, but this is a great starting point for teachers and students to get an idea of why it's important. Next, we have click here for an instructional video on how to sing the song. And so this is a great opportunity, and we are going to get into this a little more later on, is the pronunciation. And so with each word, I take the time to slow it down and enunciate so that everybody can really hear how the word sounds. And so this is going to be, if you're doing that song, a really important one to access. And here you can find the sheet music for Yohahio, and here you can find the lyrics in both English and Mohawk. So some clickable links there, the first of many. In addition to that, the guide includes songs, previous submissions of Indigenous songs in the Canadian Music Class Challenge. And so it does say, while these songs are not included in this year's competition, it's still a great resource. It's still good to have, because if you're wanting to share Indigenous languages within your class, it doesn't just need to be that song. You have a few other songs to pick from, knowing that these that you're invited to share and sing them because they were created or given permission to share with MusiCounts. And so it gives you some background information, the language, about the artist, about the song, and it includes a few of these songs here. And these each actually have a clickable link as well, and that is going to be a video of the song sang and how to pronounce it, which is great. When, like I said, we're going to get into it, but pronunciation is very important with Indigenous language. So to have that resource is really important. So now we're talking a little bit about how to actually implement it, and how to implement the song, and what to think about when you're implementing it. And so, the Canadian Music Class Challenge provides a unique experience that gives educators and students an opportunity to learn an Indigenous language through song. And what's good about this, kind of touched on it already, but these songs are specifically chosen with special permissions that allow you to feel secure, knowing that you're welcome to learn and share it. There's always kind of that question, oh, am I allowed to share this language even though it's not my language or my culture? This challenge is, like I say, it's that unique opportunity, knowing that you are secure, you have permission. But some, I guess we'll call them disclaimers again. They are shared with intention of them being educational purposes only. And so performing these songs, just know that it's meant for educational purposes. More or less, I guess that means the permission is not for you to have personal gain or, make your own videos with this song for personal reasons. And that's not just Indigenous music, that's music across the board. You're always supposed to look for permissions when you're wanting personal gain or to make your own videos for songs. So in addition to that, I touched on adding Indigenous instruments, and to me, I could see that frame of mind where this is an Indigenous song and we're a music class, we should include Indigenous instruments with the song. And well, it's a nice thought. There's so many considerations with that, and that's where I talk about that in here. What you might not know about Indigenous instruments is that there's there's protocols that exist. And the reason behind that being is that our instruments are created, are made by us and by our own hands, and they're created from, you know, the hide of an animal or the bone of an animal. And with that, our people have always believed that animal's spirit still very much exists within that instrument. And so they're considered sacred, and we treat them as such, and we treat them, you know, as if they are a member of our own family. We treat them with care. And so when I say that there's protocols, I guess what I'm talking about is those practices we do to take care of that instrument. And if you don't know about that, well, then, you know, we're in risk of I guess doing it disrespectfully, because we're not taking care. If you don't know, you're not taking care of it. It's not, of course, it's not on purpose, but I guess that's why I say, to err on the side of safety, I would probably avoid using an Indigenous instrument, if personally, for you to do it. That being said, I do say, if there's a student in your class who happens to be knowledgeable, has their own instrument, or knows some teachings around it and wants to share it with your class, that's amazing. And I highly recommend to encourage that student to share that and include that instrument in your song. That's a really great opportunity to include, because, you know, then you're doing the right protocols. And in addition to that, if you happen to know a knowledge keeper from your community and you have the opportunity to bring them in, and they want to share their knowledge or their song or their instrument, that's a great opportunity. But yeah, I guess the point is, if you're wanting to actually do it yourself, I would err on the side of safety and avoid it, just because of all those protocols that exist. And again, another disclaimer, I've mentioned again, and I've probably mentioned it a few times, there are 50 plus nations, and we all have our own protocols. So not one is the same to the other. So it's just, like I say, better to be safe. I also talk about using contemporary versus traditional music. And the benefit of this time in this time right now that we have, I feel like there's a really big a growing presence of Indigenous representation in our contemporary music scene. And so to err on the side of safety, I definitely recommend looking for that contemporary music and avoiding traditional music. And the reason why I say to avoid traditional music is for the same reason of the instruments. They hold sacred practice. A lot of them are used in our ceremony. You know, as Mohawk people, our place of worship, I guess, for lack of better words, is in the longhouse, and a lot of our songs and our instruments used in this practice are ceremonial or sacred. And so I wouldn't recommend sharing that. Again, if there happens to be a knowledge keeper who maybe feels comfortable giving an education on some of these songs, I think that's a really cool opportunity. But I would definitely avoid doing anything traditional and just focus on accessing contemporary music. And what's cool about what we were just looking at up here is that there's a few examples of contemporary music. And then there's also, underlined right here, it's a clickable link, a resource created by my co-author Cheryl, called Ganada, Contemporary Indigenous Artists and Their Music. So this is another opportunity to kind of look into some contemporary artists that are in the scene right now. Someone last time also asked a question, you know, where they might find, even where else they might look. And I mean, of course, I'm always going to say Google, because that's, you know, that's where that's the age we live in, is Google everything. But I had the thought too that in recent history, the Juno Awards have added a contemporary Indigenous artists category to their awards. And so, I mean, that's a great starting point, I would think, is maybe looking at past nominees to that category, and that might be a great opportunity to see who is a contemporary Indigenous artist today. Another clickable link here. Watch myself share considerations for singing in Indigenous language. So again, this is something that, of course, we're going to get into more detail as we go into this resource. But if you want to have a video to show your students or for yourself as a starting point, this is a great video here. Now we're getting into the activities, and they are categorized by grade levels. And so these say K to 12. When we actually click into the links, you'll see them broken up even further into more catered activities based on ages and grades. The only one that is different here is truth and reconciliation. Not so much that truth and reconciliation can't be talked about with all ages. I think you can always find a way to make it age appropriate, but this particular activity is just a little bit complex. It requires a lot of research into like policies and, so that's the only one that tends to, I guess, focus more on the older grades. These little things here, these are your clickable link, and this will bring you to the activity guide. So for me, the pronunciation is where I'd like to start, because that's always, I don't know, that's especially considering this is about singing in an Indigenous language. To me, I always remember that being my first barrier when I started learning. And I've heard that from a lot of people too, in particular when it comes to Mohawk, because the pronunciation can be so different than what maybe an English speaker might be used to. So let's start off with that one. So singing in Indigenous languages. So what's great about this, it gives you some more knowledge about language pronunciation. And each of the 50+ Indigenous languages spoken across Canada come with a unique set of phonetics and dialects within their community. So not only do each nation have their own language, each nation also has different dialects. Mohawk has 2 or 3 different dialects, I believe, that I know of. Just same words really, but varying pronunciations. And so just knowing that there's that wide of a diverse amount of language across the nation. And until settler contact, our languages have always been shared orally. So we didn't have writing. And as a result of this, we relied heavily on subtle sounds and noises that we would hear, and different inflections that we would hear. And so that's I guess a bit of a history as to why our pronunciation is significant, because we didn't rely on written word. We relied on hearing it and saying it. And so I'd say it's important for educators to know that mastering the pronunciation is the first priority when sharing the language. And that I would say starting by not even paying attention to the writing, because that's a whole nother ball game, is literally just closing your eyes and listening to what you hear. That's going to be probably the most simple way to even approach it. But if you're like me, we're in modern day now, and as a result of settler influence, our languages are written now, and the Mohawk language in particular was influenced by the French, and so you see a lot of accents in it. Like this word right here means Mohawk language, and there's an accent in there, and that's those inflections that I'm talking about, that we would get that verbally we would listen for, but in written they're indicated with an accent. And it's because it was written by the French, or influenced by the French, it is written in the Roman alphabet. So an English speaking mind might look at that and pronounce it a certain way, but the reality is that this sounds quite different. Like if my English speaking brain would look at that and say like Canyon Kiha, and the way that it's actually pronounced is Ganyak Geha. So right away, our K is sounding like a G, and our en is kind of like an oh. And so yeah, there's just recognizing that it's just because we might recognize it as the Roman alphabet or something that we've seen before, it might not be pronounced the same. And so that's why I'm sharing, I guess, my knowledge of Mohawk, but all of the different nations have their own unique way of writing or saying their language. And so this is intended just to get you thinking about that, I guess. So if you can find information about other languages or somebody, a knowledge keeper that might be able to share that with you, I definitely recommend exploring that further as you consider that they might be that different. And the creators of MusiCounts Challenge address this by providing that informational video. And so with each of those past submissions, there's that pronunciation video. And that's why I say just close your eyes and listen. Cheryl even said, close your eyes, listen with your heart, listen intently. The eyes can deceive the ears. I know I like to read. It's just my learning style. But when it comes to the Indigenous language, I think the best way that you can do it respectfully is do it how it's been done for generations and generations pre-contact is through verbal and through listening. And that's going to be the easiest way for you to master that pronunciation. And so with that, I give the activity, which is about Mohawk language. That's my knowledge. And it goes on to explain further how basically it's jolly phonics. Whenever I'm teaching my beginner Mohawk class, I always call this jolly phonics for Mohawk. It goes on to explain that it only uses 12 letters actually from the Roman alphabet, and these are those letters here. And so you're helping your students understand that while we may recognize these letters, they might not sound the same as we're used to. Kind of, I always like to say, leave your English brain at the door, because we're going to challenge everything you've ever learned about that letter. And so next we have the activity. And so each one comes with a pronunciation guide. So you can click on that. And what it is actually is it's a video that I created on YouTube where I actually sound out each word. And so really you're giving your students the opportunity to hear each letter and open up a discussion and hold an activity, which is what these are, about what they hear, what's different, what's hard to say. So further discussion prompts: what letters sound the same, which ones sound different, are any letters hard to pronounce? Like there are actually some letters that, the letter R for me in Mohawk, when I first started learning it, I couldn't say it because it was actually a new skill for my physical mouth to say. And so there are some sounds even that are new to and maybe, I guess, an English speaker or a speaker of another language. So yeah, that's the the pronunciation activity. We'll get into another activity here.
Kristi, before you move on, I think we have a question from Janine. Janine, do you want to ask your question?
Okay.
Yes, would you mind going through how to say those letter sounds?
Sure, I can. Let me just open it up again. I'll share it with you right now, of course, but if you forget or you want to go back and remind yourself, I will just point you towards this right here is the pronunciation guide, and it's just a YouTube video where I am sounding it out. But yes, I will do it right now for sure. So I have the letter A. It sounds like ah. E sounds like A. They're already challenging. H, it sounds like huh. like H as in we would know it. But I will go on to explain if there's a vowel in front of it, like let's pretend there's an A in front of that ah sound. It's a very subtle and very common sound. It's an aspirate H or a breathy H. And I'm going to say it as exaggerated as I possibly can so you can hear it right now. It sounds like, ah. So like the word for shoe is the. So it's so subtle, but it's in there and it has the potential to change the meaning of the word if you don't have that in there. The. I sounds like E. K sounds like G, so like G. N sounds like N, or occasionally it can, if it's paired with an A or sorry, with an E or an O, it's kind of nasally. You can feel it in the back of your tonsils. You're not quite finishing the N is how I describe it. So it sounds like or So I'm not saying on or un. I'm saying kind of, it's existing in my tonsils. O sounds like O. R is the one that I said it took me so long to pronounce this sound. It's kind of like a rolled R. I would describe it more like, imagine there's an imaginary L after it. So if it was RA, if I'm pronouncing RA, I would say Urla. 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 And that physically took me a long time to say because I just didn't know how to roll my tongue. But yeah, that's why I kind of do that exaggerated Urla. Urla. S can sound like S as we know it, or it can occasionally sound like a Z. So like Z. T sounds like a D, so it would be like D. W sounds like W, as we would know it. And Y sounds like Y, as we would know it. What always gets my beginner learners is I always start here, right? I teach these 12 letters, but then I go on to say, okay, now we're going to start pairing the letters together. So like if I put a W and H together, WH, it sounds like an F. If I put an S and an H together, an English speaking brain might look at that and think it sounds like sh, but it's that breathy H. So it's sa. So like ha, sa. So there's so many complex rules that are just outside of the rules of the English language. And that's why I say it's once you get into the actual written language of it, it's a whole another ball game that involves a lot of rules that will challenge your English speaking brain. Anyway, I hope that helps. That I actually did include on YouTube as well. So if you do end up going to that pronunciation guide, there's just the simple letters being pronounced, and then there's the consonant clusters, they're called. So if you're at all interested in learning that as well, that is available for you. All right. Another activity that we have here is language composition. And so that's actually looking at how the words are put together. And what I share here is that many Indigenous languages are composed of polysynthetic words. And what that means is that they're made up of morphemes or word parts. So if you imagine each morpheme or word parts being like a piece to a puzzle and being interchangeable. So one word in an Indigenous language, in particular Mohawk, can be a whole sentence. And so it paints a whole story. And often they're more verb-based rather than noun. They're often in motion. And I provided an example. It's the word for Toronto actually is Jit Garlondo. And it means the place in the water where the trees are standing. And so I kind of go on to say, like, an English speaking mind may not look at this as a verb, like that's not necessarily active, but when you think about, I guess, Indigenous ideology, you know, we believe that the trees are active. We believe they have a spirit. And so it's kind of focusing more on what the trees are doing, rather than it just being a stative sentence. And so just, I guess the idea behind this is challenging you to think outside the way that English is written. Indigenous languages are much more based in nature. They're much more about telling a story, and their words are, well, again, I can't say that across the board for all the nations, of course, but many of them are written in a way that tells a story. And so just thinking differently about that. And I kind of say that you're actively decolonizing your perspective on the true diversity of Indigenous languages. And so again, at the activity, I provide an example of how that's done in the Mohawk language. And what I do is I give you a collection of word parts that you can play around with. This word right here, Girlananuas, it means I like the song. The part right here, gay, it's the prefix, or you might be more familiar with it being known as a pronoun. So that means that's like who it's about, I. Lana is the root word, what the word is about. So Lana here is the song. And nues, the verb, I'm liking the song. So this part right here. And there is a pronunciation guide, same thing. It's on YouTube. So if you want to click on that link, it's the same YouTube page as the previous pronunciation guides. And here's an actual chart. So I provided 4 prefixes, which there are over 50 prefixes in Mohawk language. And these are only 4. So you can imagine the actual extent to how interchangeable these words are. But this activity is just kind of a simple to get your minds wrapped around it and the students' minds wrapped around it. But here's 4 prefixes, 4 root words, and then the verb is the same, just to like something, because that's the most versatile one. So I, you, she, he, you can like a song, an animal, a food, or a book. And so again, the activities here are based on grade level, and it's more or less it's thinking of those words like a puzzle and thinking of those word parts as puzzle pieces, and encouraging your students to play around with them. And then it just challenges them based on their ages. You know, even here it links you to the First Voices online Mohawk dictionary, which is a great website, and students might have an opportunity to look at that and kind of try and break the words apart. I do have an activity that relates to that. If we have time, we'll just do it quick. I am mindful of what time it is right now. It's in the nature of the puzzle. I mean, I think that the actual activity that is included in this guide is, it gives you a printable opportunity to create those puzzle pieces. However, this is in the nature a little bit different. It's a dice. And so this is an online custom dice roller. I recently discovered it. And it plays around with those puzzle pieces and lets you make different words. And so this is the first word that we learned already. Ge, lana, nues. So I'll have you pronounce each one after me. Ge, lana, nues. Gerlana nues. I like the song. Now it's a different prefix, but it's still Orlana. So someone still likes the song, but this time it's you like it. Se. Se Orlana nues. Se Orlana nues. Do another one here. Now this one is a different root word. So now we're liking the book or the story. Ge, I, Garla, story, nues, to like it. Ge Garla nues, I like the story. Just one more here, because again, I'm mindful of our time tonight. Oh, same word. Okay. She, this means she. Yay. This would be, it has that breathy H in there that we're going to end up blending with that. But this is gua. Gua. Nues. So it's yehgua. So I'm pronouncing that breathy H in there. Yeh. Yehgua. Yehgua nues. She likes the food. So again, that's in the spirit of playing around with those puzzle pieces. And again, what it does come with is, discussion prompts to talk about what their thinking is when they're doing those different word combinations. Let me just pull the guide back up. And again, if you don't know how to pronounce those sounds, of course, right here is the pronunciation guide, and I think it breaks apart each of those different words parts, and then I think it actually says how to say them all together too. Because once you're actually flowing with the word, it's not quite pronounced. It's not gay. Like, I don't know. It's just helps you pronounce it. Alrighty. Another activity we have here is related to language music and how it's social justice. And basically it talks about a few things. It starts by saying why our language is so important to us as Indigenous people and why it's so important to our reclamation and our well-being as people. We've experienced a huge loss of culture and language over many generations. My great-grandmother spoke 5 of the 6 nations languages, and to go from that to me being one of the first of my generation to reclaim that language. I'm not the only one in my family now, but like in this time period, it's been multiple generations, and now we're just getting that back. It's like, it's just so important to us, and it's so important for our identity and reclaiming our culture, because our culture is written into our words. And it kind of gives an example of that, saying the word for bee in Ganyak Geha in Mohawk language is Gajikit Dunis, and it means it makes honey. And so again, such a simple thought, but it just highlights the importance that we put in nature and the significance, rather than just saying it's a bee and I don't know why it's a bee, it's a bee. We're saying it makes honey, it has a job, it's really important to our earth, and we give it a name that honors what it does. And so that as something as simple as that is connecting us with our culture and our language. And it goes on to say music is a big part of teachings, and that's not just for us, that's for every culture on this entire planet. Music is the universal language. And so what an opportunity to connect between us and to connect our nation. And because we can all relate to music. We all have music in our culture. We all have music that we love. We have music in our family. We all have that, and we can all connect on that. And so talking about that is a great opportunity to connect and let people's identity shine. And so again, we recognize that it's important. This is important work. This is a job of social justice. This is important work to bring this language and culture back from the brink of extinction. And so, using that idea that music is the universal language, I think it's a great opportunity to connect and for us to work together, really. And like I say, connect. And it does, there's a lot of information here, so I'm kind of Cole's noting it. I do want to bring your attention to something what's called the two-row wampum. And if you're unfamiliar with that, it's actually this belt right here. And what it is it's one of our oldest treaty agreements. This is, we didn't have written word. Our agreements, our contracts were wampum belts, and they depicted an agreement. And this particular agreement is between the Haudenosaunee peoples, the Six Nations, and the settlers in 1613. And what it depicts is the two of us living side by side in harmony, steering our boats on the river side by side, neither steering into the other and disturbing the other, just living in harmony with one another. And that was supposed to be the original agreement. And I thought it important to share that, because that's what I hope for our future. That was what the way we were supposed to live on this nation. And so learning about one another's language and songs and identities, that's social justice. That's connecting, and that's bringing each other's importances to light. And so I guess that I really felt that connected with this teaching, this idea that we're doing social justice through music. And the activity is just that, is learning about one another. And so again, it's by the ages, and really it's just talking about your own songs, you kind of see that in the discussion prompts here. Like, how do you feel when you sing in your language? Well, I mean, even if you don't have a language, a language other than English, if there's a song that's special to your family, how do you feel when you sing that song? Or how do you think your family feels about it? How meaningful is it for other cultures to have songs in their language? Just getting the students to, like, I guess, think about the actual depth and meaning behind these songs and ideas, and then kind of challenging them to think about that and how we can all connect and sharing things about themselves. And that's the idea. That's the idea of the social justice, is just bringing everyone together. And the last activity that we had here was, again, it was the Truth and Reconciliation. And that is, if you're unfamiliar with what the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is, it was as a result, it was a commission that was created as a result of many years ago when Canada as a nation acknowledged the truth of its past. It finally acknowledged that residential schools existed, because that was not always common knowledge, and it was not always admitted. It was actually actively hidden. And so from that, a commission was created to create these calls to action. So the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, if you're unfamiliar with that, right here, you can click on it. It's an actual document. This link will bring you to it, and it is the steps we need to take to heal the wrongs of the past. What needs to be done to make the lives of Indigenous people better and to heal that that break between settler and Indigenous people in this nation. And so what needs to be done? And so that's why I say it's a bit complex for younger students, I would think, because the nature of, you know, having to go in and research this and then like making activities based on that. But just gives this itself gives knowledge, gives background, informs you guys as educators so that you can go in and prepare your students for it. It brings your attention to a particular section, 13 through 17, only because it is most relevant to what we're talking about today, which I guess would be education and language. Of course, if you guys would like, you're welcome to look at the other calls to action, but for this particular activity, sections 13 through 17 are best. And again, it's just opening activity or opening discussion about that, having research. You kind of see that in the further discussion prompts here. Why was this document created? Why was it necessary? How will it impact the well-being of Indigenous people? And what has Canada done so far? So there's a lot of further research that's required for this activity. Is it enough, or can more be done? And is there anything you can do? What can you do to support that? And so yeah, this is a very important information. It just takes it that step further. I think it's another act of social justice, just in a more complex manner. Yeah, let me bring. I keep having to go to different windows. My apology. That is the guide, and I think with that, we are ready. Oh, we did that. We're ready for questions and answers if you guys have any.
So there are a couple of questions. Kathy's wondering, what instruments do we have permission to use as accompaniment for this song?
So, I mean, really outside of like traditional Indigenous instruments, I would say any instrument. When my sister was envisioning the song, she really said that she created the music quite simple because she wanted the students as a music class to come together and add their own personality through whichever instruments you guys have in your class. It was more actual Indigenous instruments that I recommend straying away from. And then I see another question. Is it acceptable to add movement to the CBC challenge song? Yeah, I don't see why not. That sounds great. I guess if we're talking about Indigenous dancing, that's kind of maybe everybody has their own opinions on that, and it can have a sacred element to it as well. So again, I might say to just err on the side of safety and avoid it if you don't have an actual Indigenous person doing it, if that makes sense. But other than that, if you want to do like interpretive dance or move or swaying, like I think that adds a great element to it.
And Robin asked earlier, is it okay to transpose the song to suit children's voices? I'm
not clear on.
I think just like singing it like a couple keys higher or lower.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think so for sure. Like I say, in particular, with this year's song, I know my sister had full intentions of creating it so it was moldable and there was room for creativity. So yeah, I think that's completely acceptable.
Awesome. And Virginia's asking, will there be guitar chords for the song in the guide? I'm pretty sure in the lead sheet, which is linked in the guide, there's there are chords. Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time. I know teachers are very busy people, so the fact that you're, donating an hour of your evening to learn about how to, do this kind of thing, it's really special. So thank you so much. And thank you, Kristi. And
Thank you.
yeah, have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much for coming.